And an idea developed as part of Islamic theology that any opposition to Islam and anything that would discourage a Muslim from being confident about being a Muslim was fitna, which means persecution or seduction. Now, this fitna worldview that it's a matter of justice to prevent people from criticizing Islam is being demanded by Muslim authorities as something that the West should adopt. Muslims have been seeking legal redress for insults upon their faith, their God or their prophet. And we're seeing this international process underway, limiting freedom of speech, particularly around criticism of Islam. Salman Rushdie had thought a lot about these matters, and he wrote about the values he'd learned as an undergraduate in England. If an individual in a free society no longer has the right to say openly that he prefers one book to another, then that society no longer has the right to call itself free. Citizens have the right to complain about discrimination against themselves, but not about dissent from their thoughts. There cannot be fences erected around ideas, philosophies, attitudes, or beliefs. Whether the West adheres to its historic convictions will determine its future. Far from sleepwalking into Sharia, I hope and labour for the cause that we will continue to claim the right to call ourselves free.
I'm going to present to you on a topic which I have described as optimism, utopia and consensus in modern Australian politics. But in any event, the point that I'm seeking to make is that when you look at the history of 20th century communism and its utopian experiments, they fundamentally relied upon and assumed that massive increments in human wealth would be the result of what was then, for them, very novel and new technologies. That modern liberals, or many of them, have mistaken what they have seen in the advancement of science, which I concede is exponential and apparently irreversible and linear, and they have believed that the same thing, the same laws, must apply inside Western liberal democratic systems, which is to say we can't tell you exactly what's wrong, but we know that it will be fixed in due course. There are many public policy makers who have bought in to the Obamian tendency to believe that you can combine science and technology with something that we don't yet see or understand, but must be there, some or other tweak to our system, which will produce plenty. So much indeed that you can endlessly redistribute and have a perfectly happy society. Unfortunately, working in government, having spent 10 years inside criminal justice, wickedness, poverty, poor individual choices, they are part and parcel of the human condition. And we may hope to ameliorate them into the future, but we will never, ever, at least in the foreseeable future, take them away from human society. So optimism, yes. Boundless optimism that veers into utopianism, I am railing against it.
And I started thinking later about a government making a promise it could not fulfill, and Mexico certainly did that in the case of the Teso Bonos they were issuing to foreign countries. But just a couple of years later, we had the Asia debt crisis. What were the root components of the Asia debt crisis? It was that governments throughout the region were guaranteeing loans and investments, mostly of foreigners coming. Somebody borrow at 1% in Japan and lend it in Thailand or Taiwan for 15%. And you don't need an MBA to figure out how to make money on that. Guaranteed by the taxpayers of these countries. And they were making guarantees that they could not fulfill. Absolutely, arithmetically, could not fulfill the promises they were making. And China had some of the problem with their JETX. But very short term after that, did we learn our lesson? No. We had long-term capital management that was making promises that it could fulfill. That could not fulfill. That was not a government, but still they were making promises that could not be fulfilled. Russia, in their debt situation, had made a lot of promises they couldn't fulfill. And where are we now? State and local governments, pension funds of school teachers, firemen, policemen, all of the employees of many of the states in the United States, the U.S. federal government, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and then, of course, Greece, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, making promises that they cannot fulfill in real goods terms. The promise is in nominal claims terms. So we have what James Buchanan recently called monetary anarchy, that you can issue a claim on future consumption denominated in a nominal currency that cannot be fulfilled in real consumption terms. So we've followed up the end of the Cold War, when the Berlin Wall came down, with the era of promise breakers. And the promise breakers are governments in many of the Western democracies and some of the Asian democracies and others that have issued promises to their own people that simply cannot be fulfilled. What follows it all, I don't know. We'll talk about it. Thank you.